Hey everybody, it's Anchorman here, back with another episode of The Top Shelf. And before we get started this week, I want to thank everyone who helped chip in to get me Forza Horizon 3. It means a lot to me. The game's been an absolute blast. Thank you guys so much. Also, sorry about missing out on the episode 2 weeks ago. It was just such a busy time for me. We were just slammed with work and all this other stuff I had to do at the moment. But there shouldn't be any hang-ups in the future. So, delving into a more movie-focused topic this week, I hope you guys enjoy it. It's October, and you know what that means.
Scary skeletons and shivers down your spine. Shrieking skulls will shock your soul, seal your doom tonight.
Yep, Halloween will soon be upon us. We're about to get slammed with Hollywood horror cash-ins, which this season seems to be pretty weak, especially when following up on movies like Don't Breathe or Lights Out, and don't forget that new Godzilla movie. But this October doesn't really have anything that jumps out, and if you're like me, you like to have a few solid horror movies to round out your month and get you in that Halloween mood. Horror movies are important in the collective sense as they give us an idea of what the general subconscious at the time period was and what we were afraid of at that point. Like in the 50s, we saw tons of giant creature films, almost entirely radiation-based, which alluded to our fear of the atomic bomb. Or in the 30s, horror films were almost exclusively about foreign monsters or curses, alluding to the increased immigration and natural fears that come along with that. Horror movies are fun, but I don't want to just tell you to go and watch the big classic movies or just one type of film like a slasher flick. No, I want to put together an ensemble of good, solid movies of different subgenres to give you a wide variety to try out this month. So for this list, I picked out some solid, lesser talked about horror movies of varying styles tuned in for this holiday season, so I think you guys might enjoy.
It's alive!
First on our list is 1974's horror flick titled It's Alive by Larry Cohen. The plot follows Frank and Lenore Davis, a married couple who decided to have another child after a few years of being on birth control. When they conceive a child, and when the child is born, it comes out a horribly disfigured child with fangs and claws, and kills a few of the doctors and is now on the loose in LA. There's a subplot in there about the father feeling like a Dr. Frankenstein, and we do find out the origin of the monster baby is actually the company that created the birth control drugs that the Davises were using. It's a fun kind of campy film, but it hits all the buttons of a good monster movie with a setting and tone more modern than a Frankenstein film. It's Alive did have a reboot movie in 2008, but it doesn't really have the same vibe to it, so I'd suggest you watch the original. But the 1974 films actually spawned off two sequels. It's Alive Again in 1978, which is basically just adds more monster babies, and It's Alive 3, Island of the Alive, which is basically an island of monster children that grow up and want to get back to the United States, which is actually kind of a fun premise and has a pretty decent production value, enough so that Warner Brothers put their name on it. And it's a fun film to watch. You should definitely check it out.
Where'd you get this?
On the shelf.
If it's in a word or it's in a look, you can't get rid of the Babadook.
Now, a few years ago, a lot of people were geeking out about this movie, and rightfully so, but I think if this film nails the tone and manages to give a genuinely scary film. Now, in horror movies, I hate when a film resorts to pop scares in order to get to be scary. Now, every once in a while in a good horror movie, the monster or something may jump out at you, and that's normally highlighted by a good setup and of a decent premise at least. But nowadays, bad horror movies are forced to resort to this to get any reaction from the audience. But 2014's Babadook is a great example of a horror movie that doesn't need to resort to pop scares to get some genuine thrills. Babadook is an Australian horror movie about a grief-stricken single mother, Amelia, raising her special needs son, Sam, after the death of her husband 6 years prior. One day, she reads a pop-up book to her son about a Mr. Babadook. Essentially, it's a Slender Man-type entity that tortures its victims. Her son believes it's real and tries to fight it, leaving Amelia in an insomniac state when she begins to see the Babadook itself, and everything gets a little crazy. It's a fun psychological horror movie that's actually pretty scary without having to resort to cheap scares. Definitely check it out. The last film of this week's episode is 1992's Candyman.
Who can take a sunrise, sprinkle it with dew?
Haha, no.
Have you ever heard of Candyman?
Candyman is one of those horror movies that really had a lot of great potential and had a great short-term success, but unlike Jason Voorhees or Freddy Krueger or Mike Myers, Candyman didn't really take hold. It's your standard supernatural slasher flick setup, except instead of having sinful teens in need of slaying, it has grad students in need of slaying. And the first films, because yes, this film spawned 2 more sequels, they focus on the supernatural entity called Candyman, a local legend about a hook-handed killer that will appear if you say his name 5 times in the mirror. The first film followed a grad student named Helen who is studying urban legends at a murder site out in the projects where she learns about Candyman. You see, Candyman is one of those sympathetic killers you just kind of gotta get behind, which probably hurt his long-term appeal. I mean, Candyman is the son of a slave in a post-Civil War 1800s who had a relationship with a white woman, so the father and a mob run him out of town, cut off his hand, and smothered him in honey, where they gave him the name Candyman, and a swarm of bees stung him to death. That's a mass murder I can get behind. He had a legitimate gripe with society, but that's the reason he doesn't really get that much street cred like Freddy or Jason. He's a fan of the opera type. He's dramatic, has a motive to kill rather than he actually enjoys it, and it's an endearing origin story people can get behind. But like some women out there, society likes the bad boys, and we forget about Candyman. In the movie, Candyman is killing for street cred. He has to keep his legend alive so he can live and see the reincarnation of his lover. He kills not because he enjoys it, but for his own needs, to see his lady love. I mean, this movie was successful enough. It got 2 more sequels, Farewell to the Flesh and Day of the Dead. Farewell to the Flesh deals with Candyman in New Orleans dealing with resurrection, while Day of the Dead is basically the same exact thing. And it's just not even remotely as good as the first one, or even the second one. But the first Candyman movie is a fun urban legend slasher flick, and you should definitely check it out this Halloween if you haven't seen it before, even if you have. And it really does the genre right, and doesn't get enough credit. But anyway, guys, I hope you guys enjoyed this little video. I might do like a follow-up one if you guys really enjoyed this type of video. But we'll see how you guys, if you really enjoyed this or not. Let me know in the comments section below, or in some way on Twitter. You can find me at AnchormanV2, and I will see you guys later for the next episode of Top Shelf.